Good morning. Welcome to our webinar today put on by Sunbelt on demystifying the sales process. We're going to cover everything that you're going to need to know before you ever sell your business when and if you're ready to. I'm Joan Young, the president of Sunbelt Business Brokers, and just as a quick commercial, just if you don't know much about Sunbelt, we are the largest business brokerage and mergers and acquisitions network in the world. We have 230 offices worldwide, and we're based in San Jose, my office is, and we've really been helping buyers and sellers throughout the Bay Area for over 15 years. And we basically focus on companies with revenues from around $500,000 to over $30 million. And we're quite diverse. We do manufacturing, wholesale distribution, business services, and personal services, and love what we're doing. And before I started Sunbelt 15 years ago, I was the owner of FranNet, and FranNet is a franchise consulting company that helps buyers get into the right franchise for them. By the way, we are going to try to allow 10 minutes at the end for questions and answers, and you can put in your question in the chat box, and it's over to the left-hand corner. And anywhere, anytime during the webinar, be sure and write a question. We'll try to cover those. And if not, I will be sure and get back to you to cover that. So put your first name if you would. If you'd kindly put your phones on mute, which it sounds like they are because I know you get phone calls, and that way we won't be bothered. So I thought I would kind of go over first what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about the market and what's happening today in the market. We're going to go over 10 things that business owners really need to know before you sell your business. We're going to look at value drivers, and that is going to, once you can work on your value drivers, that's definitely going to increase your bottom line when it's time to sell. We're going to discuss post-transactional goals, and we're going to compare mergers and acquisitions to business brokerage, just for your knowledge so you know which category you fit. And then we're going to go through the steps in the sales process. So welcome, and let's get going. Okay, so let's look at the market right now. Definitely the lower mid-market has had growth year after year, probably since 2012, 13. And I think one of the things that is encouraging for you is that the buyers are definitely a large supply of well-financed buyers definitely are still outweighing the number of sellers. So we call that a seller's market. It's when there's more buyers than sellers. What that really does for you is hopefully when it's time, we're going to get multiple offers for your business. I know the last 3 out of the last 4 transactions we've done, we've had 2, 3, and 4 offers, which is such a treat because that hasn't happened since before the recession. Another thing that's encouraging for the market now is that interest rates are low. Banks are very aggressive now in wanting to fund loans for buyers, and interest rates are low. Corporate balance sheets are looking stronger, and what we're finding from banks want 3 years of financials from you, and they like to see that it's going up each year. So that's an important thing to remember too, or flat, but you don't want to be going down. And if you have gone down, let's say in 15 and 13 and 14 were good, there just needs to be a good explanation for it. Okay, we've talked about what's happening now. Let's look at what's coming. I really call it a great tsunami that is going to be happening, and that's when there's going to be more sellers than buyers. And I think what's happening is baby boomers, the very first baby boomer became 65 in 2011. And I don't know about you, but I know our numbers were not very good in 2011. There was still the lackluster from the recession, and businesses were still limping. So baby boomers that owned companies could not sell in 2011 because the banks would say, let me see your last 3 years, and it would have been 9, 10, and 11, which were pretty sad. So what I think is going to be happening, I know is going to be happening, is now that numbers are back up, now is when a lot of sellers are going to be coming on the market. And I would say in the next 2 to 5 years, you're going to see a huge shift. It's going to be a surge, as I call it. So baby boomers are going to be feeling more confident in their business and ready to retire, because now the ones in 11, now they're 69, and a lot of people are looking at that. The number one reason that people are selling is now retirement for years, and that's just snuck to the top. Believe it or not, the reason used to be burnout, that people have owned a business 10, 15, 20 years. Now they want to do something differently than they've been doing. So that's something important to consider too. Okay, let's now look at the 10 things that every business needs to know. I can't emphasize enough preparation. You need to prepare now. And even if you're thinking about 3 to 5 years from now, now's a good time to start. Now, some of the people that I've spoken with and we've done valuations for, they really are ready now. They've handled their financials they've in a good sound way. They're not putting a lot of cash in their pocket. They're keeping track on QuickBooks, which makes it easier. Some of them are using GAAP methods, GAAP accounting practices. So definitely start preparing, and we're going to talk in this webinar about how you can do that. One of the things is getting expert advice. You need to start putting your team together now, or start interviewing people and talking to transactional accountants and transactional attorneys. We definitely have a referral list of people that we've worked with successfully over the years, and I would say definitely I would feel confident with you calling any of them. Of course, we have 2 or 3 favorites that are deal makers that we feel very strongly about, but a lot of our sellers that come on, they say, oh, I have an accountant or I have an attorney. And usually your accountant will be fine, but typically the attorney that you've been using is not the one that you would be using to help you in the transaction. It's a whole different type of law. The third point that I want to make is orderliness. I really think it's next to godliness when it's coming to selling your business. And I know we've all sold homes before, our home. And you know how the realtor comes in and stages your home or gets it all ready. The same thing really needs to be done with your business. Now, if you're a manufacturing company and there's sawdust everywhere all over your plant, they know you're working, so that's expected. But you don't want a 3-legged stool or 2-legged stool sitting in the corner and have inventory that you haven't sold in 5 years. You want to get rid of things like that. So that's what I'm talking about, orderliness. And the financials are probably the most important. We've talked to sellers before that are interested in selling, and I asked to see their financials because it gives us a good idea of how you've run your business. And if somebody says, well, I don't really have them, I just keep track, on a legal pad of my transactions and I have my deposit slips. That's typically when I'm going to say, let me refer you to an accountant that can help put the last 3 years together for you. And yes, it's a pain to do, and congratulations, because I bet most of you already have your books in order. So the last point is, I think it's so important to know what your business is worth. We go to a doctor to get our physicals every year or every 2 years maybe, And many people have had a business 10, 15 years and have never had it valued, and they're just still working, still grinding away, thinking, well, I'm sure I probably have to work another 3 or 4 years. If you had your business valued, you may find out that you could have retired 3 or 4 years ago. You're in very good shape, or you'll find out the opposite, that no, it's not making what you thought you needed to retire, and you'll know what you have to do to make that happen. Also, make sure that if you're in a business that has key contracts with clients or leases that are assignable, or if you have a lot of equipment that needs to be assigned, make sure that your agreement says that they can be assignable, because if they're not assignable and the new owner that has bought your company needs to use that equipment, what will happen is the seller will have to stay on that lease and they will have to pay you monthly. And it's just nice not to be in the middle of this. So I highly recommend getting that taken care of ahead of time. Everybody, and this is to the person, is going to freak out sometime during the process. And that is the buyer and the seller. So I think most people are on today are owners of companies, but I think one of the things that throws sellers more than anything is the amount of information that they have to pull together for a buyer for them to do their due diligence on your company. Basically, what a buyer is doing is just verifying that what you have said that you're making and the revenue that you're producing and the clients that you have is all true. And so there's going to be a lot of things that they need to look at, and some of it you're going to think is unnecessary, and they're going to think it is. So you will freak out sometime during the process. And I always say selling your business is not for the weak of heart, because it is a big job. And I try to make it as painless as possible for our clients by just preparing you. You know what's coming and what has to be done. We use a Dropbox at Sunbelt where all this information is put, and only the buyer and their team, which would be their accountant and their attorney, are allowed to look at it. So that really protects you as far as security-wise. I think also you're going to see that the deal is all about the fit and the timing. You're going to probably talk to 3 or 4 interested parties in your business. One of them is just going to stand out for you, and it's either going to be that they're easy to work with, kind, not attacking, not demanding, but there's somebody that you think you know would work well with your employees and that would do well with your clients. So it's definitely about that. There might be a great person looking at the business, but they're just getting started in the process. That usually means they're going to take a lot more time. They're going to look at quite a few other businesses. So maybe that person was your favorite, but it's just not the best timing for them. Monogamy happens at different points for the buyer and the seller. So typically, when you're in the driver's seat initially, and you have 3 or 4 people looking at your business, that's kind of a nice place to be. And then once an offer is made, now the monogamy starts. Once you've accepted an offer and the buyer starts due diligence, you're in a monogamous relationship with them until they decide that it isn't the right business for them, or you decide they're not the right buyer. It's very important during this process that you, the business owner, keep wooing this buyer. You want to be able to keep them informed on new and good things that are happening with your company. If you just signed another large contract, that could help. If you just hired a new manager, all those things are important to keep that potential owner of your business in the works. So just remember, keep wooing. Lawyers are an interesting bunch, and I think it's so important for you to know this is your deal, not theirs. You've hired the attorney to help you and to protect you, so nothing's going to come back to bite you. There are some attorneys out there. Hopefully, we're not working with them, but they kind of just want to pound their chest and show that how much they know, and they're causing unnecessary problems in the transaction. And that's when I often step in and ask them, are you a deal maker or are you a deal breaker? And because there really are. There's attorneys that are deal breakers, and we want to work with somebody that's going to protect you the most, but get to the finish line as well. And that's another point, going back to that monogamy, and when you're talking with different buyers, there might be a buyer that's a great person and has good experience, but from my experience, I don't think they're going to get to the closing table because of the kind of questions they're asking, because things that they're telling me possibly about other businesses they're looking at. So I will be sharing with you, if we get multiple offers, of who I think is going to have the best chance of getting to the closing table, and it's not necessarily the highest offer. And by the way, when you're getting an offer, it doesn't mean you have to accept the offer that they gave. We typically counter, and we'll go over that when we go through the steps. Okay, we're now at value drivers, and value drivers are going to really help you get the highest potential for your business. And I think when we look at this, you're going to be able to see maybe some areas that you need to be working on. We've talked a little bit about financial history. Make sure your taxes have been filed for every year. If you're thinking about selling in 2016, make sure they get filed early in the year, because a buyer and the SBA, the Small Business Administration, will require that they have that before making a final decision. So you want to do that. Are you the one that does everything? Does all the knowledge of your company go home at night? If so, you need to look at your management team. And yes, it might mean that you have to pay somebody some of what you've been taking home, but in the long run, it's going to make your business worth more. A buyer doesn't like to think that the minute you leave after the training and the transitional period, that there's really nobody that knows much, and they're all minimum wage employees. So think about the management depth of your company. Also, look at your customer diversity. I sold a business once, and this is one I was really nervous about. 80%, maybe 75 to 80% of the business was with one client. I know, can you imagine? So the buyer, of course, was nervous, and so, but they wanted the business very badly, so they put in the offer that the seller would stay on for 3 years as a salesperson, because that's what he really enjoyed doing. He didn't like managing people and really running everything. So he loved the idea of staying on for 3 years. They gave him I think a very nice salary. And after 3 years, he signed on for another 3. He's still there, and I think it's in their 8th year. But he has helped make that, I think instead of 80%, it's down to 50% now, really without losing that large account, but by adding new business. So that is something that the goal to shoot for is to have no client make up more than 20% of your business. That's kind of what SBA looks at. How involved are you? Probably one of the best answers is that I love to hear is, well, I'm kind of semi-absentee. I work maybe 15, 20 hours a week. I take vacations. That's ideal. That's music to a buyer's ears. Last year we sold a business, and the owner lived in Florida. He came to visit his business once a year. He was on the phone and emails and things and worked maybe 10 hours a week, but it was from Florida. We had 4 offers on that business, and he was netting. His adjusted net was over $500,000. That was a good business. I could sell that every day. So look at your involvement, and if you can start, if you're not thinking about selling for a couple years, just make sure it's not all about Bob, as we call it. Look at your competition, and what is your edge over the competition? Is somebody new coming in? Buyers are going to want to know these things, and we write about them in our confidential business review that talks about you and how you stand up against them. Is there any product that you could add to make you a little different? Do you have a second location or a third location? Buyers often like multiple locations. How happy are your customers? How are your Yelp reviews? I sold a business last year that had, I think, 2 or 3 of the worst Yelp reviews I've ever read, and I can't imagine a buyer not being quite nervous about that. But part of the offer was that the seller would do everything they could to get those Yelp reviews off of there, whether it's giving free, this was a maid service. Was it giving free maid service, or offering to show them that a new owner was there or the other employee is no longer there, because it's so important that customers are satisfied, as well as employees. We love to hear that there's loyalty there and that they're going to stay and they really take ownership, so to speak, in the business. Do you have any proprietary technology? Anything that's defensible as far as something that you have that nobody else has? It could even be an HR issue with your company, something that you do, some software that you're using that's proprietary and makes the business seamless and much more easily run because of that software. Any business strategies that you're initiating that gives you kind of a niche in it. Do you have any niche products? That's also important. So let's say you've thought about this retirement thing, and I think it's, I've talked to a lot of people, and their reasons are all over the board of why they want to retire. I know some people want to just set up retirement so that their children are going to be set up well. Others are just, their main key is to get the best tax treatment. And there are ways that, in fact, our last closing, the seller did not need the money from the business. So he set up a trust fund with a company that I've worked with personally, where you're not taxed on the money that you choose not to take out. They invest it for you, and whenever you need it, you can take it out and you pay tax on it at that time. It's deferrable. It's a deferrable tax method that can be done. Also, I know some of you really aren't ready to quit, but yet you just would like not to have 100% of the responsibilities. Well, that's something that many buyers like, the idea that you're willing to stay involved, maybe not 8 years like the fellow in that manufacturing company that's a salesperson for them, but maybe you'd like to stay on consulting and get paid for consulting for the next couple years, so you can kind of wean yourself off of this business that you've been doing a lot. Other people, they just want to do their hobbies. They haven't played golf in years, and they want to do that before they get too old to do it, or spend more time with grandchildren. One of our last transactions, the owner's reason of selling, and she's done it 30 years, they wanted to just travel. They bought a big SUV. It's a big motorhome kind of thing, and they're going to travel for 3 or 4 months and then come home and maybe work part-time in a complementary business, but not competitive, and they're just going to spend more time leisurely because they've been working so hard. You may want to relocate. I've talked to quite a few people that are going to Oregon or Washington because it's quite expensive to stay here when you're retired. And then I've had other people say, that are still young, they're still in their 50s or early 60s, and they say, I want to get into another business. We're selling a business for a fellow in his late 40s in January after he gets his taxes done. And he's only done it 5 years, but he said, I did what I wanted to do. I've built it, and let's find another one. So that's the beauty of owning your own business, isn't it? You can do what you want to with it. Time-wise, it takes about 6 to 12 months to sell a business. I have done a handful in 4 months, but typically, even if I had somebody in my database that I said, yes, this buyer wants your kind of business and he's ready to move forward, it's going to take 3 months with somebody before I do anything. So 6 to 12 is more likely, and I would say 5 to 8, maybe 9, if you have solid financials, if you have good employees and all these things we've been talking about, it will sell more quickly and with multiple offers. Due diligence, once a buyer has made an offer and you've accepted it with maybe a counter here and there, and now we're ready to go into due diligence, the reason it takes a while is because if your buyer is using the Small Business Administration to lend them money to be able to do this deal, they can take 90 days just with them. So it doesn't mean they're going to be looking at your books for 90 days, but they typically do ask for at least 30 for that. 120 days, that's a very long time. That would be for a large transaction that could, 120 is a long time. I would say some of our larger transactions, our $10 million to $20 million deals, can take definitely 3 to 4 months to close. Private equity groups, you see that fourth bullet, PEGs. Private equity groups, investor pools can require 45 to 90 days, and you will always be asked for an exclusive period. So once you've accepted their offer, they're going to ask for a no-shop clause, meaning we cannot talk to other buyers during this time, this no-shop time, and we cannot accept any other offers. You can understand why, because they're going to be talking to and working with and paying accountants to help do their due diligence, so they want to make sure they are in first place for those 30 days that they ask for or longer. Let's take a look at the difference in mergers and acquisitions versus business brokerage. A lot of people call business brokerage Main Street and versus M&A, and they really are very similar processes, but they use different terms, and different requirements are definitely in place for M&A. You can look there, mergers and acquisitions. These are typically businesses that are being priced at probably $5 million, and business brokerage is usually anywhere, up to $3 million. And that $3 to $5 million could be in either category depending on the business and their profitability. In finding out the profitability of the company, mergers and acquisition use the term EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. And mergers and acquisitions typically require it to be $1 million in EBITDA, where in business brokerage or Main Street, they refer to seller's discretionary earnings. And in seller's discretionary earnings, we include the seller's salary, where in EBITDA we do not. It's usually larger businesses that do not include the owner's salary. M&A requires packaging and often a retainer to package the business for the seller. It's much lengthier book, as they call it sometimes, where in business brokerage or M&A, there's typically no upfront fees. In M&A, in your book that has everything about the business, is oftentimes the asking price is not mentioned in that, where we always put the listing price in a business typically up to $3 million, unless there's some reason we've decided not to, and that usually is plus inventory. The value in M&A is typically requires a formal valuation, and a formal valuation is anywhere from $3,500 to $10,000 for a formal valuation. In business brokerage and businesses under $3 million, you can do a snapshot valuation for as little as $750 or an informal valuation for $1,500 to $3,500. So it's much more reasonable for smaller businesses. M&A, typically 3 to 6 methods are used in that valuation, and in the snapshot or the informal, 1 to 3 methods used. And financial performance is measured by EBITDA, which I think I mentioned that before, and SDE, seller's discretionary earnings, is the other one. All financial reports are analyzed in the M&A. Typically in business brokerage, they're going to be looking at your P&Ls, balance sheets, and tax returns. The other thing that we need to look at, I would say M&A, it's usually manufacturing, distribution, wholesalers, large service operations, where business brokerage could be a small manufacturing, a small distribution and wholesalers, but also you're going to have in there food and retail and personal and business services. Buyers can look at both, but typically the buyers for the large M&A companies are going to be private equity groups. They could be a strategic buyer, somebody that's in your industry already, but in LA, and they want to have presence in the Bay Area. It could be a strategic buyer in that you do a certain kind of widget and they're doing something else, but they're complementary, and your customer base could definitely help their business and what they're selling grow. There could be synergies there. National and international companies could come in and buy a large M&A company, family offices, which is kind of like a private equity group, but it's really all family, and they've pooled their funds together. Basically, for business brokerage, and probably those that are on the webinar today, they're probably going to be individuals. They could be high net worth individuals, or they could be a strategic buyer, which could be a local competitor. Typically, it won't be a private equity group. And for that business brokerage, brokers or Main Street businesses, they're really looking for personal income and growth, where M&A and the private equity groups, they're really looking for return on their investment, because they're probably going to turn your business in 5 years. That's what they do. They build their portfolio, these private equity groups, they build their portfolio. They might have 6 or 7 companies that they own now, and they're looking for other businesses that complement what they have, or they may choose a business with a new platform that they can grow from. But they're really looking at return on investment and high growth. So they're a little different. I wanted just to make sure you knew that. Okay. Finish up on that. In M&A, it could even be an auction where there's a date that you're accepting offers. And definitely with business brokerage, we typically get our best people from the internet, and we market on 21 different websites. But I don't like just waiting for the phone to ring. So with your permission, that's when we market to strategic buyers as well. M&A presentation that is put together is called a teaser or a memorandum or a book, they call it. In business brokerage, it's called a presentation or a blind summary with a confidential business review, which we call a CBR. So you can see the strategies are similar, but it's just called different things. M&A offer usually starts with a letter of intent, where in Main Street or business brokerage, we typically will start with a letter of intent or an asset purchase agreement. If it's a business under $1 million and it's a pretty straightforward business, I always like to start with the asset purchase agreement. Mergers and acquisitions, often you'll see a business as a stock sale, not an asset sale. And typically business brokerage, it's assets, typically. So let's go through the steps in the process. I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. This webinar has been taped, and it will be on as of tomorrow. It'll be on our webpage. So if you'd like to go on our webpage and go to webinars and look at today's date, you'll be able to hear it again if there's something you wanted to get back on. Okay, the first step that we always take is get a value analysis first, and that really helps you know whether you want to sell now or later. Then we sign a engagement letter if it's an M&A transaction or a representation agreement with the seller, agreeing on terms, and that is done secondly. Then we put together a list of targeted buyers, and that's really with both businesses. In M&A, we contact those targets. In business brokerage, we mail them a blind summary without the name of your company and everything. Everything is done very confidentially. After we get that list together, we're going to be creating an executive summary or confidential business review, and you are getting to proof, and whether we take care of you or someone else does down the line, make sure you sign off on everything that is put out there to buyers, to potential buyers. You want to make sure that you know what is being done to market your business every step of the way. Yes, and the next step is getting a confidentiality or a non-disclosure agreement signed and a profile sheet on the company or the individual getting the business. Then if they're qualified to look at your business, we then send them a confidential memorandum or CBR. That's the one that does have the name of your company, and we have their confidential business review, non-disclosure, so we make sure they know how important it is to keep it confidential. Next step is to have a buyer-seller meeting. So we've gotten their NDA, non-disclosure agreement, back. We've been able to look at them, talk with them. They have seen your information about your business, which could be 6 to 30 pages, depending on your business. And that's when buyers and sellers and the intermediary would be sitting down together to get all their questions answered. If they're from out of the area, which with Sunbelt they actually could be very likely because we have so many offices all over the country that they have access to the listing. So it could be somebody from New York, LA, Singapore that's interested, and then we would conduct a conference call for the first step, and then they would come out. If everything looks good, a buyer is going to submit a letter of intent, which we call an LOI. If it's a smaller transaction, they will then submit an asset purchase agreement. We help with the negotiating of the deal. A transactional attorney will be involved as well. Once they come to agreement, it goes to due diligence, and during due diligence, that is when they typically are writing all the definitive agreements, whether it's an asset or a stock sale. For smaller transactions, they do the asset purchase agreement or the LOI before the due diligence begins. Larger transactions, M&A, that is done in tandem. They're writing their agreements as they're doing their due diligence after the LOI has gotten in. So once everybody agrees on those definitive agreements and we're ready to open escrow, escrow typically can close in a week to 3 weeks, depending on whether there needs to be a bulk sales notice done, which we won't go into, and then the deal is closed, and you are given the money that you have earned after all your hard years of work, and the deal is closed. Now, of course, you're going to be doing some post-closing adjustments if there was inventory that still needed to be done, if there was work in progress that needed to be taken care of. All of that is handled through escrow if you choose. If not, it can be handled between the buyer and the seller outside of escrow. But now the training takes place, the transition takes place, the employees are now the buyer's employees and no longer yours. We have a letter that we share with you that you can give to them that's saying how much you've enjoyed working with them, but it's time to move on, and that they are no longer your employees, but the new owners. So now where do you start? You've gotten hopefully some education, and so is it that recreation that you want to do? Is it golfing? Is it buying another business? Or is it just investing your money in another place? I'd like to take it off mute now. I don't see any questions in the chat box over here. If anybody wants to write one, we have about 5 minutes. That keeps it a little bit more confidential, but I will take it off of mute. And let's see.
The conference has been unmuted.
Is there anybody that would like to ask a question before we end our webinar? I must have done a good job. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being on. And if you would like to ask any particular questions that relate to your particular business, feel free to give me a call anytime. And if I'm not available, I will get right back to you. And my email is there as well. So thank you so much for getting on. And we do these webinars about every 6 weeks. So we'll make sure we let you know when the next one is. Thank you so much, and Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.